I tried to approach this series without bias. I really, really did. But as an independent self-published writer, I can't defend it anymore. To me, it has devolved into something very offensive. That's what we've been given, a brand new story not written by Tolkien, and barely fitting with Tolkien, but we're told it is Tolkien. It leaves me to wonder, why not just brand it as a new world fantasy? I'll look into that later. First I want to explore my turning point from neutral to against the Rings of Power. That turning point came from the Adar storyline in episode 6, where we see Adar captured and questioned by Galadriel. Now I emphasise here, I actually really like this scene, and I like Adar's character, probably more than any other character in the series. I emphasise with Adar and the plight of the orcs. I thought it was probably the most engaging and thought-provoking interaction in the entire show. It also reinforces how horrible Galadriel is, but that's another issue. My issue comes with it not fitting with Tolkien. The nature of orcs is something many of us have questioned, and other creators have touched on. But the malice of the orcs serve a different purpose in Tolkien's world, and we really shouldn't be subverting that and at the same time saying this is a Tolkien story. Now, I remember being frustrated at the orcs when I was introduced to Lord of the Rings. I wanted to see a decent orc, or even just a neutral one. Just one to show that these are a people too, and they aren't all evil. But I was putting my own feelings into this story. Over time I came to realise that Lord of the Rings is essentially good versus evil, and orcs are the most visual and common form of that evil. Again, I found Adar intriguing, and applying the greyness of existence is my go-to mode of entertainment. I prefer grey over good versus bad, but Amazon have deliberately changed Tolkien's vision in doing so. The orcs aren't supposed to be redeemable, because they are corrupted by Melkor. Now this is a bit fuzzy and questionable, and people will argue with me, and that's fair enough. And Tolkien himself was unsure how to approach it. He changed his mind on the creation and nature of orcs more than once. But the fact remains, in the time of man, they are essentially a fundamentally cruel race. They are a creation or a subversion. They are made to be evil and spiteful. They are supposed to be what they are. And even if men and elves treated them better, they would still be a violent race who absolutely hate and loathe elves and man. Because of this variation in how we look at orcs, I'm a fence-sitter on this story arc. I do like it very much. I just don't think it belongs in this series. Amazon have warped the original vision of Tolkien and turned it into their own vision. If Amazon wants to explore that, I think that's a great idea. But why change a written work that already exists? Why not look at the many other stories out there that explores this idea? Or why not create your own fantasy story? My answer to that question is very cynical. The reason they don't create a new world is because Lord of the Rings is established, and that means easy money. By turning their own view of someone else's story and slapping Tolkien to it, they can get a much larger audience to watch it from episode 1 without proving itself. This will always provide a fan base that will embrace a wrong story no matter what, because it has the name to go with it. This is a travesty on 2 levels. Firstly, it's a travesty to Tolkien, who championed epic world building and gave an entire history to delve into. And secondly, it is a travesty to unique works that struggle to be seen and read, especially by the big name companies that continuously prop up established brands with fake stories to pull in money. It is not fan fiction, it is corporate fiction. I am part of the writing community. I have self-published books. They're not that great, but the fact is I'm part of this community, and there are many people who have written many books, and some of them are fantastic. And the saddest part for me is seeing other creatives embrace this show. And I think a fair chunk of them embrace it because of politics rather than the storytelling itself. But I've seen several others who comment on it in a story writing fashion, and I just can't understand it. To me, it's like they're praising something that isn't true to original, and I wonder how would they feel if someone did that to their books and made a shitload of profit off it. I mean, it's one thing to have fan fiction. It's another thing to write something vaguely based off it, call it the same thing, and then try and make a lot of money off it. Yeah, I'm sort of wandering there. On one hand, I say, well, if you like it, good for you. But when I see fellow struggling writers supporting something that is essentially made up fiction but applied to an established brand, it just makes me want to weep. I feel these people are betraying themselves, and I might cut blush back for that, but it's true. And this is where my anger towards Rings of Power emerged. And on the other side, I feel like it's a tragedy to non-white creators as well, because there is an entire planet out there to draw from, stories from all over the globe, and so many writers who want to be seen, so much content I would love to see. But here in the West, we keep reusing the same stories while ignoring the potential well of so much more. We hear calls for diversity, but we're not seeing diversity in storytelling. And that is the most important area in my mind, because that's where everything else will automatically fall into place. Again, what we get is just the same stuff, rebranded and regurgitated and fed back to us, because that's easy money. Even though I'm not really a franchise person, I do watch that stuff still, and I have no issue with well-known stories or worlds still drawing in the crowds. But I draw the line when those stories are deliberately changed until it's basically unrecognizable except the names attached to it, or so poorly thought through that the previously rich universe now feels empty. Corporate fiction will always continue, and as long as it does well and respects the originators of those ideas, I don't mind. But we as viewers also need to hold them to accountable, because if we keep accepting subpar quality of established franchises, they will keep producing them. There's a reason why they don't bother creating a new world for this story, and that's because in its current state it would have failed. The only thing that has saved it is brand recognition. I feel this could have been a decent story if it was within its own world and carefully thought through, and Amazon would have had to sit down and thought through it carefully if they wanted to create something original. There's always a threat of that kind of things failing, and sometimes I see things with great ideas but they just don't quite work. But these are the failures of spending the time sitting down, nutting through these things and just putting the love into them. It's not the failure of being an unrecognized brand. But corporations are there to make money, and the easiest way to make money is to go with what is already there. To take a risk on something new, it's not really done anymore. Occasionally things prop up. In the old days, in the 80s and stuff, entertainment was full of experimentation. It was a beautiful time. It was just so imaginative and so much came out of it. It was probably the golden age of fantasy and sci-fi in some respects, because big companies weren't afraid to take a chance. The problem with big companies is that eventually they do become too scared, and what we get is stale, repetitive, just stuff chucked together, things that won't be remembered in 10, 20 years' time, at least not positively. Things that won't be rewatched again and again. Just something simple that we can consume that will bring in the money now. And this is the reason why now I've moved. I'm no longer in the neutral zone for Rings of Power. I've drawn a line, and I hope others who are sitting on the fence, or even those in the positive camp, will also take something away from this, because Tolkien deserves better. That's what it comes down to in my mind. Nothing against the actors or anything either, because I think they did well with what they're given. I enjoyed most of them on some level, and even the ones I didn't enjoy, I thought the performances were decent. I just want to point that out. I don't think this is an issue of the actors, it's an issue of the motivations behind the series. That's me out. Later.